Welcome to the IoT For All Podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Hey, it's an absolute pleasure, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Very excited about this conversation. I'd love it if you could give a quick introduction, maybe about yourself and the company to our audience.
My name is Utpal, responsible for edge cloud computing aspects, along with the partner ecosystem in our IBM Cloud, which is a part of IBM infrastructure. And I work for an amazing company called IBM. I'll be surprised if you don't know what IBM is, but we are in services, consulting, software, infrastructure. We are a data, AI, and cloud company.
Tell me about your partner ecosystem. I'd like before we dive into the kind of the questions we had outlined ahead of time. I would love to just learn a little bit more about how you all work with partners, given how heavy the IoT industry is when it comes to the importance of partnerships.
Partners and ecosystems are the lifeblood and critical for our growth and success. We believe that we need partners and ecosystems to help them be successful, and along with that, drive outcomes for our customers. And so ecosystem at a very high level is categorized into build ecosystems where we embed our solutions with them, work with our GSI partners, and then a large ecosystem of resellers who take our offerings and sell it to the market. Many times they layer in with their own customized solutions using our software and our products as the nucleus for that.
So one of the topics I know we wanted to cover today was as you all look at the IoT industry and the different areas that you all focus on, the companies that you talk to, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing the clients that you work with face when it comes to considering adopting and deploying IoT solutions?
Enterprises globally are facing, and I mean, before I get more into the IoT, enterprises globally are facing unprecedented pressures to keep pace with the fierce industrial adoption, technology adoption, with technologies like IoT, AI, and cloud. And many of them are very interested in working with a lot of these technologies, but they're stuck in their use case. They're stuck in the POC stage. They're stuck in defining or identifying how to get to the ROI stage. And so the technology opportunity for IoT is huge, but many of these enterprises lack the understanding or the infrastructure needed. What are the underlying software to leverage? How to define the ROI to make it successful? Those are some of the challenges that we see when we work with the customers on the challenges that they are facing.
Are there any particular industries that face these challenges more than others? It sounds like a lot of what you just mentioned kind of can be applicable to any industry, any deployment, but are there any that maybe stand out as kind of facing more challenges than others?
The common themes are consistent across all the industries. The adoption of IoT solutions on the edge, ROIs are a little bit more, return on investments are a little bit much more easier and more defined. I would say the industrial sector, automotive are a little bit faster on that. I think companies which are more in the regulated side tend to be a little bit more overcautious because of the regulations associated with data compliance, associated with sovereign cloud requirements or sovereign government requirements. They tend to be a little bit more cautious, rightly so, and therefore, they are a little bit behind because they do spend more time in trying to define those checks and balances, if you will.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen industrial and automotive really take a big step forward in their willingness to adopt IoT technologies, AI technologies. When it comes to those two that we've seen any hesitation, it's been around privacy and just understanding how these technologies are still going to keep information and data private, as well as if it's driven by anything visual like computer vision. How are we going to keep the identities of people that the cameras would be seeing private? The one area which I'm curious to get your thoughts on is how have you overcome the challenges in any industry that seem to be a little bit more traditional in the way they do things and they have existing infrastructure, they're happy with their existing infrastructure, but you're coming in there with another solution or new technology that can really amplify what they do. How do you kind of get them across that gap of understanding to really see that value and see that ROI without maybe a huge investment and really, kind of just start to have them kind of see the light, if you will?
I think there are three things that I would categorize this into. And we talk to the customers and try to meet them and help them in the journey that they're currently in or the infrastructure that they currently have. First, from an infrastructure standpoint, is security and compliance. That's non-negotiable. Even if it's a traditional industry, in fact, they tend to be a little bit more cautious, but alignment on security and compliance is just easy. There's never any dispute and debate. Always want to make sure that your solutions are secure, comply, and at the same time, open. What I mean by open is making sure you understand what's behind it. For example, a lot of the models that you see right now in artificial intelligence, Gen AI, you want to make sure that the model is understandable so that you have a clarity on how to go deep and what it is basically built upon. Second is data, Ryan. Very important. Now, data is going to be on-prem, data is going to be on cloud, data is going to be in a combination of multiple places. And you will never have data in a place which is not secure. And so based on kind of data, based on regulations that you have, based on your company's policies, you will always have a data in on-prem, on cloud, and now with edge, there are many situations where you would like to have data on the edge so that you can quickly run those models, etc. So when we talk to the customers, we always try to make sure that when you build those applications, comfortable making sure that your applications can run seamlessly on-prem, on cloud, and on the edge. And the third one is with the new technologies like Gen AI, as I just touched upon, it's about models. You don't need to necessarily have the biggest model. You need to have the right model. You need to have the model which can meet your requirements. And from an enterprise standpoint, many times you don't need those large models because you have very specific requirements and you need to make sure that it's trained correctly with your company's corporate data and requirements. When you look at those things, the investments required are not high. And so you just need to make sure you understand what the business case is, start working on a POC, make it happen, and then move forward into deployment and start small and then scale from there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up kind of the POC to deployment because that's something that we've seen really help organizations see the ROI and the value that these technologies and solutions can provide them, getting them to the point where they're willing to deploy a POC. But I think, as most people listening to this know, the IoT industry has had a big problem getting from POC to deployment, right? That pilot purgatory that people talk about all the time. What have you found to be ways to help drive deployments from the proof of concept MVP to deployment? How have you been able to see a higher success rate potentially than what others are seeing? Because that's where a lot of these deployments get stuck. And what advice do you have for companies looking to try to figure out, well, how the heck can we get them from MVP to deployment quicker, more successfully, so that they can really see the true value, which is when it gets to scale?
And that's one of the challenges, and you hit the nail right on the head. We are also seeing where companies are interested in dabbling with it. Some of them have a more structured process, and I like to call the more structured ones as defined POCs or pilots. And then basically you need to move fast and you need to move quickly. Now, to your point, they basically do a POC and then they're a little uncomfortable moving it into production. My point of view on this is when you start the POCs, even before you start the POCs, you got to make sure that there's a level of understanding on the business benefits and the return on investment. Now, once the POC happens, you don't need to deploy it. You don't need to deploy it in a massive scale. You need to deploy it in one edge location. Start with a smaller set of edge location, see the benefits, and then scale. And that's one of the things that we are seeing where once you have done a POC, you don't need much dollars and investments. You can just deploy it in like 5 locations, 8 locations, and then scale from there. For example, we're working with a large automotive company and we did a POC with them, working with one of our partners called American Tower. And it was on one of the edge locations for an automotive company that really saw the benefits. They had a lot of vehicles in the parking lots. They wanted to run an edge use case. They immediately saw the benefits. Now, they have thousands and thousands of locations globally. We told them, let's get it done in the first location. Let's scale it to 8 other locations and then start talking about hundreds of locations.
We've seen very similar strategies used in the automotive sector where, hey, we're going to get into a few of your dealerships first, or we're going to get in a few of your lots first. And then once you start to see the value, the ability to connect that to the long-term ROI and the multiple of of that success that you'll see if you now scale to all locations is almost a no-brainer for them. But it's really getting, what's the lowest barrier to entry that we can start to show them that value at a level that matters to them. And once you do that, you're off to the races. Once you've been able to kind of show that value, everybody's on the same page at that point, very aligned, and just trying to get to scale as quickly as possible.
The other thing, Ryan, that we do see, which is a little bit of a corporate structure also, or a corporate mindset of organizations, companies which are more innovative, companies which have made sure that their executive stakeholders are bought in, they are much more open to moving faster. On the other hand, if they're not able to get all the stakeholders on board or some of the critical stakeholders on board, we notice that they challenge a lot. So it's also to do with the corporate culture and the mindset and how well you're navigating internally with making sure all of your stakeholders are on board.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that the earlier you have alignment on that, the less roadblocks you're potentially going to come to if that ROI is observed early on. We've seen situations where you'll have a champion internally who will get a deployment into a POC stage, and then they have to go back and basically justify this to everybody else, and they're just kind of learning about it for the first time. So the more stakeholder buy-in you have earlier on, the better it is. So I think that's a big point people need to understand and try to advocate for when they're working internally on their own company or selling and trying to deploy a solution for a customer. When you think about what it means to have a successful deployment, especially from like an infrastructure standpoint, how do you all define that, or how do you kind of evaluate what success looks like for any given deployment?
Obviously, business benefits are being realized, solutions running on the edge, that's a given, it's meeting the customer requirements. But stepping back and looking at it from an infrastructure standpoint, there's no greater joy and urgency in making sure that those five critical requirements of infrastructure are followed. Compliance, regulation, data security, ability to make sure that your applications that you build can run seamlessly on-prem, on the cloud, or on the edge. And then obviously with a lot of these new technologies, ability to make sure that those new technologies can run seamlessly. So just to be repetitive, security, compliance, regulations, data governance or data, making sure that the data is protected. And then the application should run on-prem, on cloud, on the edge. You don't have to build new ones each time.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to kind of take what you just said and tie it back into what how my first question was when we jumped on here around your partnership ecosystem, and maybe just talk to our audience a little bit more about how you all approach things from a partnership standpoint. What are you doing to support and enhance these IoT deployments that either you own the relationship in or maybe your partners own the relationship in? What is your ultimate goal in helping in how you help those deployments see success?
At the end of the day, the most important thing is customer success. We got to make sure that the customer requirements are met. And so to answer your question, how those contractual agreements or how those models work, it can be anything. It depends. It can be a hybrid combination. In many cases, our service providers who have the biggest relationship with the customers own those contracts. They're the ones who have those ultimate responsibility of making sure the solutions are deployed. They work with partners like us, the software providers, the technology providers like us. In many cases, we own the contract directly. And so we work with our partners to bring them on board. Now, it doesn't have to necessarily be our existing partners. We have to do what's right for the customer. And so in many times we use customers' existing partners, which is much easier. If they don't have depending on the use case, depending on the solution, if they don't have an existing partner, we will bring it. It's a combination. It's a medley of multiple pieces of the puzzle to help meet the customer's eventual requirements.
Always interesting to kind of learn how many people or how many companies can come together to deliver, or sometimes are required to come together in order to deliver a successful deployment for a particular client and use case, and you name it. So the more that's easily set up, and the more that's understood, I think the more likely you're going to see success, which is awesome to understand how you all play a role in that.
Exactly. Just to give an example, on a classical edge use case, one of the customers we're working with, we are working with a data center provider. We are working with a service integrator. We are working with a telco provider who can provide those 5G network as one of the requirements from an edge standpoint, depending on the use case. High bandwidth, low latency. Depending on a use case, there can be a network slicing requirement. And then some of the IoT devices from another partner. So at any point in time, there can be 5 or 6 partners at the minimum to make that solution work.
One of the last things I want to ask you, because this kind of ties back into, the area in within IBM that I know you really heavily focus on around the edge. We've talked about edge a lot on here, kind of the value it's providing in the industry. But given where edge computing is today, how are you seeing it really play a role in accelerating that innovation and unlocking those new business opportunities now that we have AI and IoT coming very close together with almost any deployment nowadays?
I think the power of edge, we thought that the moment 5G would come, there's going to be a booming growth of edge and IoT because 5G unleashed and opened up a whole new world. And as I mentioned, because of features like network slicing, low latency, high bandwidth. So we did see a new set of use cases come up because of the 5G. But still, I think there was something that was stopping. I think there was something that, the customers were still thinking they were not able to fully leverage a lot of these. Gen AI, I believe, will strongly change that because now you can run models on the edge. You can quickly start providing a new set of features and functionalities and benefits to the customer. Sure, it's going to cannibalize some of the existing business models, which is always the case when a new technology comes in. But it's going to unearth a whole new set of use cases across all the industries that we have not even touched on. So from an edge standpoint, hybrid cloud, AI, and with obviously benefit of technologies like 5G is going to just open up a whole new slew of use cases.
Are there any particular industries or use cases that you're kind of starting to see rise to the top in deployments and demand for AI and IoT solutions? I know we talked about industrial and automotive as big ones, but any others that you kind of have your eye on that you feel like over the next 6 to 12 months we're going to start to see a real big boost in interest in these types of solutions?
Let me just touch on industrial and manufacturing. We are seeing huge. I mean, they've always been ahead of the curve, but we have now seen a huge demand, and that's across industrial manufacturing. You can talk about mining, you can talk about offshore, automotive, etc. But then financial services is now looking at how do we leverage this? How about fraud management? How about effective services on financial benefits for the customers instead of having a retail location? How about creating POPs or edge locations, if you will, and provide all of those services at the same time, ensuring that the frauds and management is happening over there, right? The governments are looking at how do they provide additional services to citizens through these edge functions and facilities. So it's just opening up a whole new stuff. We were talking to a customer. We're just looking at providing this in a healthcare location, especially in developing countries where they don't have those kind of healthcare hospitals and facilities. How do they leverage edge to provide these healthcare facilities or benefits in remote locations?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting spaces that I think, are starting to really see the value these technologies are providing them with opportunities to have new solutions deployed that don't interfere with their existing infrastructure. The technologies are much more, or I guess, are at a point of maturity that people not only understand them, but they're fitting these use cases even better. And that's bringing the cost down. That's making these things more achievable and less barriers to companies saying, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Let's run a pilot." And then a lot of things we already talked about here today, I think are good advice on how they can set themselves up for success once you kind of got that pilot started and working to get to scale, which is where everybody wins. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I truly appreciate your time. For our audience who wants to learn more about what y'all are doing, kind of with deployments, reach out, maybe learn about the partner ecosystem, touch base, follow up in any way. What's the best way they can do that?
They can always reach out to me, but the best way is to just look at IBM.com. We have everything on our public website. You can easily go to the IBM.com and they will link you to the various industries that you're focused on. We have a nice categorization on solutions and products.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed having you. I think our audience is going to get a ton of value out of this because it's talking about a topic that is very relevant right now. Given where we are in the industry, with the technologies more mature, the deployments kind of picking up in a lot of different industries. The insights today, I think, are going to be tremendously valuable for them. So thank you so much, and we're excited to get this out to our audience within the next couple weeks.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for your time. Looking forward to this. I appreciate it.